Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today. This actually feels like I haven't filmed in ages. I actually haven't sat down in here and sort of filmed this since 2018. But I have been busy filming declutters. So hopefully, I think by the time this video is up, they would have all been up. I would have had my holiday, which is great. But I'm actually very excited to get back into filming like this, and also very excited to get back into wearing makeup because the last few days I've had air conditioners installed. I've decluttered my sort of like makeup collection. I've been doing some cleaning. I just haven't been wearing makeup. So today I am testing out a palette for the first time, and then I will check back in with different looks and let you know over about a week how I feel about this palette and how my first impressions sort of evolve as I use it. So the palette I'm using today is the Norvina palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills. This has been out for, I think, 6 months to a year. This is untouched. Oh my God. So the box is purple. The packaging is purple. It's that typical felt packaging from Anastasia Beverly Hills. And this is the first time I'm opening it. Let's open it. Ooh. Oh, geez, that was a bad opening. So it's the same format as past palettes, but this one is a little bit more cool toned and has some purples. It's got some warm shades in there too. Like it's got a pop of sort of like an orangey color and some sort of warm browns. But it is sort of interesting because it's a little bit purplish, which I kind of like. So I'm going to be using this for about a week and I'll let you know what I think about it. This was released when I was doing a low buy, so I sort of skipped it, and then when it was on sale, I'm like, it is too good to pass up, so I want to try it. Today, I'm going to swatch this. I'm going to do a first look and let you know as I'm applying the makeup what I think about it. I think I might go a purpley look today. I feel like I want to delve into the sort of brighter colors, and then I will use all the colors throughout the week and check in with the looks I've created and what I think of each shade. So let's get on to it. All right, so before I actually put it on my face, this is the palette. So you can see that the top row are shimmers and the bottom row are mattes. These two and the pink actually look more like satins. So I wouldn't say that this is, like, I think this would apply like a matte sort of row, but there is a bit of shimmer in this one, and the pink one. These 4 shades are definitely matte. And these have different textures of shimmer. Some look like your traditional shimmer, some look like more of a chunky glitter, but you do have pinks and you have some purples in there dotted in, which is interesting. I would have loved to have seen like a dark plum in there instead of the red sort of color. I think that would have gone well, but it's a pretty looking palette. And I like the sort of shimmer matte split. All right, clean arm, let's do some swatching. We have Dreamer, which is a beautiful, very smooth, nice champagne. It's got a slight peachy tint to it, so it's not your sort of yellowy champagne, it's slightly more peach. Then we have Summer, which is a nice bronze. This actually looks very warm on camera, but on the side, hang on, I'm just gonna have a look. Yeah, it looks more warmer on camera. In person, it looks a little bit more neutral, but it's a very pretty shade. We have Wild Child, which is a pink. This sort of looks like a topper shade. I'm going to get a little bit more of that. So it doesn't have like an opaque base. It's more just like, I just turn the brightness down a bit. So you can see that it does have some color at the base, but it definitely would work probably better as a topper, because if I just get some on my finger and just put it here, you can see that it looks really pretty just as like a little sparkly thing going on, so you could use it either way. Then have the shade Rose Gold, which is really pretty. I wouldn't call it a rose gold. Once again, it looks a lot warmer and a lot more red on camera. It almost looks a bit more burgundy and a little bit more plummy in real life. Then we have Celestial, which is that purple. This is a little bit flakier. Like, it doesn't feel flaky when you pick it up, but it's a little bit flaky when you're applying it, but it's a nice sort of warm toned purple, so it's got a lot of pink to it. It looks like it could be a duochrome, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a nice pretty color. We have Dazzling, which sort of reminds me a bit of Rose Gold. This is a little bit more nude, but they're quite similar. They all apply so far really nicely. And then the last shade on the top row is Drama. And this is, it would add a bit of drama. It's like a blackened, I don't know, blackened purple color. It's a really pretty color. I would have liked to have seen a matte in that color. Like this does complement the shades, but I find that mattes, dark mattes tend to, I don't know, I tend to use them more personally. Now on to the second row. So we've got base, which is, it does apply like a matte, and it's a really nice skin tone color for me personally. This is like probably my perfect base color, and probably Norvina's as well. The purple is Soul. This, you can see the shimmer slightly, but once again, this would perform more like a matte, but it just has a little bit of shimmer in there that you can barely see. And I feel like that might be to help the blendability of it. And then we have Incense, which is sort of like a caramel brown. Yeah, caramel brown. So just a warm brown sort of crease color. Then we have the shade Love, which is a really nice sort of dusty pink. I actually think that's a lot prettier than I expected. You can see a little bit of fine shimmer in that, but once again, it would perform on the eye more like a matte. Then we have Volatile, which is a nice cool tone brown. It's got a little bit of readiness to it, which I really like. Then we have Eccentric, which is very similar to Incense. It looks a lot more orange in the pan, and it looks a little bit more orange on camera. In person, they're kind of similar. And then the last shade is Passion, which this is actually a really beautiful shade. It's like a burnt red terracotta sort of burgundy color. It's really, really pretty. So these are all nice performing sort of matte satin shades. And just in case anyone wanted to see, that is after swatching. So I didn't do any heavy swatches. That is what the pans look like. All right, now is time to use this on my eye. I'm wearing a mustard sort of colored top, so I'm thinking I might go purple and sort of a mustardy color. I don't know how that's gonna work. We will see. If you're wondering, I've already put a base on. It is the NARS Tinted Smudge Proof Eyeshadow Base, and it's in the shade Medium Dark. I love this one. It's like a caramel color. It blends out really nicely. I love it when you zoom in and realize that you've missed a patch in your brows, but you don't want to get up and do anything about it. So I see it. I see it. All right, so I've just put a fluffy brush into base, and I don't know if you can see, but it does pick up a lot of, like, it kicks up a lot of product. And I'm just sort of setting my base with that. I can tell a little bit from applying it here that shimmer is evident on the eye. Like, you can't see it in like shimmer specks, but it definitely has, I don't know, it gives a different finish to the skin, like a slight sheen. I do still like this color. I think it's nice if you've got fair skin or lighter skin as sort of like a base color, but it would work really nicely as a highlight color as well. It's a little bit more cool toned than like some other sort of nude colors that I've seen. All right, I'm using this eyeshadow brush from Quartz Beauty. It is the, what is it called? Eye Base. I was actually planning on doing a get ready with me using all of these brushes because it's a new range from my friend Crystal Conti. So I will actually do that when I get back from holidays, but I thought I want to use this anyway. So I'm using this flat brush, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm going to use Summer, I'm going to use Celestial, and then I'm going to probably use Eccentric and also Soul. So those are the colors I'm talking about. I'm sort of going orangey and purple. So one side of the brush, I'm picking up Celestial and I'm just packing that on. That one isn't, I don't know, it's sort of, I feel like it's a shade that'd be better to put on with your finger, which I don't love, but I don't know. It is a thing. It's sort of like a thin shade, more like a topper shade, but once you sort of put it on with your finger, it's quite nice. I just don't really like having to put things on with my fingers because it's not very precise and it limits what you can do with that shade. So yeah, it does actually apply like that. Like, it didn't take me long to apply this, but you do, I think if you just wanted to apply with a brush, it's gonna take some time to build it up. On the other side of the brush, I have Summer, which is that gold shade. This one does pick up a lot nicer, as you can see. You could once again sort of foil it if you want to be more intense, but I think it picks up nicely just on its own, which is what I like to see. I actually really love the combination of gold and purple. I think it's really pretty. I just wish this purple was a little bit more intense, so I might just try to pack it on a bit more. All right, with a domed pencil brush, this is also from Quartz Beauty, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some of that mustard color here and purple color here. Wish me luck. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I might also mimic the same under the eye. So the mustard color here and the purple color there. So this mustard color, which is eccentric, is very, very pigmented. So just be careful. And I'm just applying that really gently into the crease. And I'm just going to mimic that on the lower lash line. I really like a sort of smoky lower lash line, so that's why I tend to do stuff like this. All right, I've discovered something really, really weird about this particular eyeshadow. So if you can see here, I put on quite a lot to start with and it went sort of that orangey color, which is fine. Then on this one, I put a little bit less. And when I went to step back and have a look at them compared to each other, I'm like, oh, I need to put more on. The more I put on, the more it builds up to looking like it's brown. So you can see that that looks like it's more cool tone brown. That looks like it's more burnt orange. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting a bit of a subculture vibe with this one a little bit, that sometimes if you build it up or it mixes a bit funny, it goes a different color. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to have to hide that with some of this gold later on. So that's why it looks uneven and weird. It's the same shade. It's just that one looks like chocolatey brown and one looks more orangey. So I'm going in with that purple on the same brush. I've just wiped this off a little bit. I just like the shape of this brush. So on a cloth, I have wiped it off. There's a little bit of orange still on there, but it's not like transferring onto the skin. So it's sort of, you know, a little bit tinted, but it's clean. And I'm just running this into the crease. I'm actually really surprised at how different these purples are. Like, you know, I do know that they're different purples. I can see it in the pan, but they don't really complement each other as much as I was expecting them to. This is very sort of gray. This is very pink, which is interesting. Lower lash line. All right, that's looking a little bit like a dog's breakfast. So I'm going in with that same brush that I used. This is clean but stained, with that base color that I used at the start just to blend this out. These sort of flesh tone colors, like if it matches your skin tone, works. They're really good at sort of just blending out or toning down some of the color. And even though I like this purple color, I just think it's looking a little bit like a dog's breakfast right now. It's looking a little bit mishmash and a little bit messy. I've got a lot more purple on this eye than I do on this eye, so I'm going in just a tiny bit on this same brush and just sort of fixing that. All right, so far I'm liking this sort of gray purple color, this bluey purple color. I don't like the connection to this purple. I think it just looks very, very different, and it looks a little bit, I don't know, a little bit weird. I would have loved to have seen a shimmer that complements the matte, whereas these look very distinctly different. Like you think the purples should work well together, but in my opinion, I like this purple. I think it looks really unique. This purple is a bit wishy-washy and I don't love it as much. So I'm going to go in with the matte purple just to sort of put down some more purple here to make it sort of blend a bit better. And then I'll just use the shimmery purple as a topper, which is a shame that I don't like it so much on its own. I think on its own, it just doesn't really look great. It just looks a little bit wishy-washy and bland. So I think all of a sudden that already makes the look a little bit more cohesive. And then I'll just pop some maybe on the midpoint where it sort of transitions to the gold color. All right, I don't want to add in too many more colors because I feel like I want to see distinct colors as I do these looks throughout the week. So I wanted this to be more orangey and purple and test those colors out. So I'm going to go back in with Summer, which is that gold color, and I'm just going to hide some of this weird color mix up down here. I think by far this Summer shade is the best performing shade I've used in this look. It just does what you want it to do. It's a nice color. And I'm just applying this with, I think this is Real Techniques. I don't know. I think it's a detail brush. It's totally rubbed off. All right, I've noticed that that orange that I put in there is almost completely gone. So I'm going in with a clean brush because I don't trust that orange shade so far. I think since I feel like it looked completely different on the different eyes, I don't want to use a brush that has any other color on it. Not that that was an issue when I first applied it because I applied it with a clean brush, but I'm going in with the crease definer brush by Quartz Beauty, and I'm just picking up a little bit of that eccentric shade just to pop back in there to add a little bit of more warmth because that purple really did take over. I don't want it to like overlap too much because it's going to look really muddy, so I'm just popping it right sort of in the socket there. All right, so that's the eyeshadow look. I will just go off and I think I won't do liner today. I think I'll just do mascara and some half lashes, and I'll let you know what I think because I'm a little bit mixed thoughts about this palette. All right, this is a look with some mascara. I used the NARS Climax mascara. People that have been following my videos for a little while, this is getting better as it's sort of like drying out a bit. So if you've got this and you don't love it, I think it does a much better job after a couple of weeks of opening. So stick with it, it does get better. I also put this Pixie liner just in my waterline. This is the shade Rose Glow. I find with my eye shape, putting a pencil or a color in my waterline always makes my eye shape look a little bit better in my opinion. So I use this one. And I also put half lashes just on the corners. Now, if I was just wearing this on a daily basis, I wouldn't do this, but I'm filming beauty news afterwards and we film from quite a distance and often your eyes look really tiny if you're not wearing liner or lashes. So that's just why I've done that. So I do like this overall look. It looks a lot nicer on camera than I actually think it looks in person, but I'll zoom out and we can discuss it. All right, so after using the Norvina palette for the first time, I am not loving this, but I'm not hating this. So there's a few things that I sort of have discovered that I didn't particularly like, and a few things that I do like, and a few things that I need to play around with more. So firstly, I think the biggest disappointment for me is probably the purples. I find that this Celestial shade is very, very different and a little bit jarring with Sol. Like they don't actually work super well together. And I also found like Celestial doesn't perform great on its own. It really does perform better if you apply it over another shade. Even if you apply it with your finger, it tends to be one of those shades that just doesn't want to look vibrant on the eye. So you either need to really build it up or keep going back and intensifying it. And I just found that the pinky nature of it versus this one, I don't know. I don't think they worked as well together as I sort of hoped that they would, since they're in the same palette and they're both the purples in here. And you sort of think, oh, the purples should complement each other. They don't really. With the color Sol, I'm going to say it performs quite nicely. It can be a little bit dominating because it is quite pigmented and it can take over the eye look, as you can see, pretty easily. Also, just be careful. It can look like a bruise. I caught myself in the mirror before and I was like, oh, do you have a black eye? No, you're wearing Sol. So even though it does perform well and it's a unique color, I would say use it wisely because it can look like you've got a black eye. So that's that. When it comes to the shade Base, I think this is a really nice color. If you've got fairer skin, it's a nice sort of like base color, but because it does have a slight sheen in it, and I feel like they've done that to make the formula maybe work a little bit more smoothly, I feel like it changes the texture of it. So normally when I put a matte on, just either as a base or to blend something out, it sort of diffuses the texture on my eye. It sort of like hides it, whereas I found that this amplifies it. So any sort of little bit of texture on your eye, because this has a slight shimmer, it will catch the light a little bit more and it just looks a little bit funny. So I would have preferred this to be a flat matte. I do like the color, but I think this particular color, since it is a cooler toned nude, if you do have quite deep skin, it's going to make you look really ashy and really chalky. So I think if this is similar to your skin color, you can use it happily. But if you are a lot deeper, you probably will avoid this, or just, yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the iridescence to it. Sort of, makes my eyes look a lot more crepey than it needs to be. When it came to the shade Summer, which is just a goldy bronze, it was probably the best shade. It picked up easily on the brush. It applied really nicely. It was fine, but I sort of expect that because I've used a lot of Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes and their metallics are particularly good, and their sort of browns and golds and bronze sort of metallics are particularly good. So that one, if that was bad, I would be very disappointed in this palette, but that was a nice shade. And then lastly, Eccentric is a little bit eccentric. I need to use this more and figure out how I feel about it, because for some reason, as you saw when I put it on one side, it applied more like a burnt orange. It didn't look as bright on the eye. It sort of tones down to more of a burnt browny orange. But then on the other eye, when I had to build it up more, it went more sort of neutral brown. It was really peculiar. So I want to see what's going on with this. I don't know if it's just a shade that once it sort of builds up, it goes darker. So you sort of have to get it right the first time, because I put it quite a lot on this eye and it looked fine. But then I put less on this eye and then I was like, oh, I need to build it up. And as it built on itself, it just got darker and darker and darker and less orange. So it was very, very strange. I actually thought for a second that I reached for this and I must have put that on, and I didn't. It's got no dab marks where the brush was. So yeah, I'm gonna have to play around with that more, because that is a weird shade, and I don't like shades that are unpredictable. All right, guys, it is day 2 for my Norvina palette look, and today I decided to do more of just a typical sort of brown look. I'm just editing today. Usually on a day like today, I wouldn't even be wearing makeup, but I thought I wanted to give this a go. But before I get on to what I'm wearing today, I thought I would give you an update on the look that I created yesterday, which had the purples and whatnot. And I think on camera, that look looked pretty decent. In person, not so much. When I left the house, I sort of realized how strange it looks. So sometimes you do your makeup and you're like, oh, this looks cool on camera, looks cool in photos, looks cool in the mirror. And then when you sort of leave the house and you're in like everyday settings, you're like, whoa, this makeup looks kind of strange. And I went out to lunch with a few friends yesterday, and then what happened was I went to the bathroom and I caught myself in the mirror and I was like, holy fuck, oh, that's right, I'm wearing this makeup. And I just feel like that sort of cool toned purple really made me look a little bit unwell. There was also a time where I was on the tram and some guy was like staring at me and I'm like, is that person checking me out? Oh my God, I haven't been checked out in so long. And then when I realized that I was wearing the makeup, I'm like, oh no, they're probably just staring at the fact that I'm wearing really weird looking makeup, because it really did look like I had really sunken eyes, or that I had like bruised eyes, or that like, I know that people wouldn't have looked at it and gone, oh, she's got bruised eyes, but it just looked like a bit jarring. The color combination was a bit weird. That purple looks a bit strange. So I think that purple can be used well, but I just feel like you have to be very careful with it, because it can take your look from sort of wearable and fun to like jarring and looking weird. So that's how I felt my makeup was like yesterday. I didn't love it, so that was an update on how I felt about that. But today, like I said, I'm going more browns and just basic because I'm having an editing day. So the shades that I used today, I went back in with this light shade. No, this one down here. I don't like it. Base, I don't like. The reason I don't like it, same as yesterday, I used it just in the crease to set my primer, and I just feel like because it's got that bit of a sheen, it just emphasizes everything. Right now, I'm not sure if you can see, I do have a bit of a like raised bit from, sometimes when I get skin reactions, I just get a little patch on my eye, and I've got 2 at the moment, and it just makes it look like it's really, really obvious. So that base shade really emphasizes all flaws, which I don't like. To the point where I'm like, I don't know why they didn't put just a matte in there, and I don't actually want to use it anymore, because unless you use it as a brow bone highlight to get a little bit of like reflection and a little bit of light catching, sure, but as just on the eye, it just doesn't look very flattering. It really emphasizes all lumps and bumps and creases and cracks. So yeah, there's that. I put that in the crease, so just really softly in the crease. It performed very nicely. Then all over the lid, I used the shade Dazzling, and that's actually a really beautiful shade. So it does apply quite nicely. I feel like if you want to make it really intense, you have to apply it once again with your finger or over a really sticky base like a glitter glue, but it does apply like a nice metallic sort of shimmer. It does have a bit of fallout. It's a little bit like not flaky, but a little bit of fallout. I found I had fallout here, I had fallout there. So it is probably best to tap off your brush, apply it, and then if you want to intensify areas, go in with your finger and just tap it on. So Dazzling, yeah, beautiful nude shade, and it looks really beautiful on the eye. I think in this lighting you can't see how nice it is, but it's nice and light reflective, really sort of pretty color. And then I used just in the outer corner, I used Volatile. So that was just to sort of try a different shade and just to deepen up that little bit on the outer corner. That shade also applies really nicely. So even though it's called Volatile, it applies very nicely. This one probably should be called Volatile because that is a volatile shade, which I'll use more soon to play around with. But the shades that I used today, besides the one that had a bit of fallout, they applied nicely, and besides Base, which I just don't like the shimmer to it, but it's just a basic look that I used. I also put a bit of metallic bronze liner, so I used the same one that I used yesterday, so the Pixie pencil. This is a beautiful pencil, and to make it a little bit different, which I don't think you can see just yet, but I used Maybelline. This is the Falsies in the shade Navy Glam, so I used a blue mascara. So I'll zoom in and just show you this eye look quickly. It's not very exciting. All right, so that's the eye look there. So like I said, I've got a bit of a metallic liner going on. It's just a nice sort of nude metallic look with some brown to blend it out. It's nothing exciting. Yeah. This is a type of look that you could easily also get from the Sultry palette, and so far I prefer that palette. So if you like these sort of basic brown looks, Sultry palette's probably so far a little bit better than this, but yeah, that's the look that I created today. All right, we are back for day 3, and with the Norvina palette today, I decided to go for some of the darker colors. So the colors that I used on my eyes today, okay, I went in with this shade that I still don't like, just sort of set the crease a little bit, and I put it on my brow bone highlight, which I think it works all right as a brow bone highlight, but it does, once again, emphasize texture. Then I decided to go in with Eccentric. So I put that in the crease, and I really wanted to see if it behaves well, if it does anything weird. It seemed to behave pretty well, so that was in the crease. I also put that a bit on the lower lash line, and then I went in with Passion, which is this sort of dark burnt red color. This is a really nice color. I put that on the outer corner. I blended it into the crease a bit on the outer lash line as well. It looked fine. It went well with this color next to it. And then I decided on the lid as like the primary sort of bright light reflective color, I went for Rose Gold. Rose Gold's a beautiful color. It applies in a very like, it looks very metallic on the lid, so it's not like a subtle shimmer. It's a metallic color. There is a bit of fallout, so just be careful with that. But it is a really pretty shade. It's a little bit crumbly. I don't know if you can see in the pan, but the color on the lid is really pretty. It's almost quite rosy, so it gives a bit of a like rosiness to the lid as well, which is pretty. It's called Rose Gold, if that makes sense. And then I wanted to try this shade here, so I put that on the outer corner, sort of the outer half of the lid, and sort of blended that out a bit more with, you know, more of these two shades. It works fine. It works fine. All the shades that I used today work quite fine, besides a bit of fallout. I think the thing that I did notice about this, and this is just my personal preference, like everything I do on my channel is me giving my honest opinion. It doesn't have to be everyone else's opinion. It's not facts, they're opinions. But I do feel like I really wanted to pair these two together, and I found that similar to the two purples, they don't go very well together. So this is very, very cool toned. Like it doesn't look super cool toned, but it looks almost purple like a plummy purple on the eye, and it just doesn't blend out very well with Passion. I sort of wanted, I think this is where the opinion comes in. When I like to wear sort of a shimmery shade on the lid and I like to blend it out with another color, I like that color to sort of complement the color that I've put on the lid. So I sort of want it to be a shimmer and then blend out with something that works well with it, that transitions well to it. But I found that these didn't work that well. I sort of thought that they would pair a lot better than they do, similar to the same thing with these, but it was the opposite issue with these. Whereas this is very warm tone, that's very cool tone. This is quite cool tone, that's very warm tone. So I just found that even though this is a nice sort of shimmery shade to deepen a look, I think if you are using it with warm shades, it sort of changes the look quite a lot. I will zoom in and show you this look, but the last thing I did do, because I felt like all of a sudden I made my, I was expecting to be more of a warm look, I've turned it quite cool. To balance that out a little bit, I ended up putting a little bit of Celestial just on the inner corner on top of Rose Gold. I really liked Rose Gold on the lower lash line and as like an inner corner highlight because it's a really, really beautiful metallic, almost foiled finish look. But to balance out the sort of coolness or going on here, I wanted to put a bit more coolness on the lower lash line, so I put a little bit of Celestial. So I'm not too sure if you can tell on camera, but you can see how that went really almost grey toned. It went very plummy grey, and I balanced that out there with a bit of purple. But I think what I was sort of going for was this beautiful rose gold color. I wanted that to transition to more of a burgundy color, but it ended up, that drama color ended up looking quite blackened. So that's what I think I'm trying to say, so this went into a different direction than I was expecting it to go. I like the overall look, but I was sort of expecting it to pair a lot better with Passion, but in my opinion, it didn't. You can work them together, but in my opinion, they were a little bit, they're completely different vibes. Hopefully you can see as well, I just did that pop of purple in there just to balance cool with cool, warm with warm. I also used a green liner. This is just by Prestige. I used that on the waterline, and I used a brown gel liner so it didn't look too dramatic, just shapes the eye a little bit more. All right guys, we're back for day 4 of the Norvina palette. It's already getting really grubby. This sort of happened yesterday when I was using the darker colors. Today I'm doing sort of a pink and orange look. I'll zoom in so you can see it in a second, but essentially what I did, I originally went to go put this shade Wild Child on the lid, and then I realized not only is it very, very bright pink, but it's also more of a topper shade, so it's almost like got a translucent base to it. Not completely, but it does look more like a reflect, like a soft reflect than it does a solid color. So I went and I put the Eccentric orange shade just on the outer corner. I put that over the top, like overlapping in the center, and then I put that color more heavily on the inner corner. So I then went with Eccentric as well, ran a little bit on the lower lash line, and then went with Love, the matte shade or the satin shade, and blended it all out. So it's like a pinky orangey sort of look. All right, so hopefully you can see the look a bit better there. I actually think it's a pretty look. I think the colors work well together. These are not colors that I normally wear on a daily basis. They're just not really, I don't know, suited for my coloring as much. But if you do like pinks and like warmer sort of dusty pinks, the matte works really, really nicely. It looks nice to blend out a color. I think it's a really, really pretty sort of transition shade. It would work really nicely with cooler tones and whatnot. I also think the transition of the orange to the pink is really, really pretty. It sort of gives it, putting the pink over the orange gave it more of a rose gold sort of look. And then I used Wild Child sort of heavily built up, and it's a nice sort of pop of color on the inner corner. So it does hold its own pretty well if you build it up. But I actually quite like this look. The shades worked really well together. The colors worked sort of cohesively together. With the purple look that I was talking about and the look yesterday, I found the shades weren't as cohesive as I would have liked, but these ones, the pinks work well together. They work well with other colors. I can see them working well with the golds in this palette, the purples in this palette. So even though these aren't my colors that I would normally gravitate towards in this palette, I think they work quite well. So I was pleasantly surprised how these perform. All right, so even though I have used pretty much all shades, I was going to use Dreamer in this look as well, but I've decided that I want to come back and do another shade, another look with some of the purples, maybe mixing them with different colors, because I wasn't so sold on the purple shades and how they sort of work together. So I wanted to do a different look using them. So I'll use that Dreamer shade tomorrow or the day after, whatever it might be, with some other shades in this palette, and then I will conclude it. All right, guys, it is the 5th day of the Norvina palette thing that I'm doing. And I think I'm gonna not only call it here because I'm going on holidays tomorrow, but I have used all the shades, and I've used a few of the shades that I wasn't sure about a couple of times. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I did say I wanted to use some of the purples, or like the purple again, and I decided to pair it with something that wasn't actually in this palette. I decided to pair it with more of a taupe bronze shade, because you could definitely pair these purples with some of these shades, but I really wanted to see how it goes with more of a cooler toned shimmer. So yeah, the thing that I had an issue with when I first wore this, besides the fact that I wore it in the sort of crease and I found that it looked a little bit bruise-like, I just found that this shade is very, very cool toned. It's very blue, and when you pair it with these kind of shades, these are more warm and it sort of looks a little bit jarring. So I decided today to pair the purple with, like I said, a shimmery taupe. I also used Dreamer, which is this shimmery shade just in the inner corner. It just works as your average sort of champagne highlight color. There's nothing particularly special about it. It's a little bit flaky. It's nothing amazing. I used this shade here on the lower lash line and also on the outer corner of the sort of taupey look that I put on, and then I also blended it out with Volatile, that cool toned brown there. So this look is okay. I do have to say that the purple soul color does like disappear a lot. So I've just noticed that when you wear it with warmer toned shades, it really like stands out because it sort of contrasts, or does contrast. Whereas if you sort of blend it in with more cool toned shades, I've just noticed that it looks like it disappears. Like I can barely see it on my lower lash line. It just looks like another gray kind of color, so it doesn't look super impressive. Thought I'd just zoom in and show you what I'm talking about, so you can see that I'm just using sort of a taupe color, blended it out with that cool tone brown, put some of that purple, which has sort of disappeared, and put some on the lower lash line, which also has sort of disappeared. So I think this definitely looks a little bit more organic with these cooler tone shades, which don't appear in this palette, so it's a bit strange having it there. But when you do sort of work it with cooler tone shades, it sort of just melds in and disappears. So, you know, that can be a good thing for some people, can be a bad thing for other people. I'm sure you can build it up if you wanted to. Like, I'm just gonna put some on my finger now. You can just build it up a little bit to add more sort of purple in there if you wanted to. So if you do want a more intense look, it definitely does build up, but also you're just gonna be careful that since it is quite a soft color, you can sort of blend it out and it sort of starts disappearing. So you do have to build it up to get more vibrancy with that purple. But I think this color looks a lot better with these sort of taupey shades, which don't exist in this palette. So I think I'm ready to conclude what I think about this palette after I've used it for 5 days. I know a lot of people love this palette, and I understand why people do love this palette, but for me, I think it just didn't hit the mark that I was expecting it to. So I'd have to say that this palette for me, if I rank it, it would probably be just above Subculture, which I didn't like. That's my least favorite Anastasia palette. And the reason being is not that the formula is necessarily bad, because the Subculture, I like the colors, I didn't like the formula. This one, I don't mind the formula. There are some issues with a few of them. I think my issue with this palette is that not everything, but a few things just seem a little bit off. Like, I knew what they were going for and they could have done it really well, but it just didn't really work. It sort of reminds me of that term where, and I'll have to put the term on the screen, but where you see like a human robot or a human CG and it just looks a little bit off and it makes you uncomfortable. That's how I feel about this palette. I think overall it looks great and overall the formula does work reasonably well. There's just a few things that don't seem right and I just don't really like it. So for example, the first thing is this shade has a bit of shimmer in it and it really does amplify skin texture, and instead of actually going a flat matte that blurs skin texture on your eye, this amplifies it. I don't like this shade. I don't get the point of it. Then there's some basic shades like Dreamer is just a basic champagne. You've got Summer, which is a basic bronzy gold. They work fine, but there's nothing revolutionary about them. Warm crease color, cool. It's fine. And then you also have like Wild Child is an interesting pink. I was actually like this more than I expected to, but once again, this is more of a topper shade, so it's not, I don't know, I think you have to play around with it, but I think it works better as a topper. The purple is a bit lackluster. Once again, it works better as a topper. I didn't really like it, and it really does sort of clash with the purple here. If there were more mauvey shades that you could really work in with this to make it a lot more wearable, or if there were more cool toned sort of shimmers to work with this to make it a lot more wearable, it would have made more sense. But you kind of think I'm going to pair the purples together and they just clash. They just clash for some reason. Then we have this shade, which has been behaving itself, but when I first used it, it was sort of like subculture where the color did change a little bit. It was a bit bizarre. I still don't get it. And then these two colors, once again, if I'm like, I want a smoky sort of reddy dark eye, I'm going to pair those two, and they really clash. This ends up looking like a gray, like a blackened plum. It looks really purpley gray toned. And then if you try to mix it with the other dark color in the palette, once again, same kind of thing. It's like, it just clashes. So there's just things about this palette that are a little bit off with me. I would happily reach for this as pops. So like I did today, I wore a different color all over the lid, and then I've just reached for this for little pops. But I have to say that out of all the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes I've used, this one just isn't right. It just doesn't sit well with me, and I'm sure you can create some beautiful looks with it, and I'm sure you can really try to work those purples in different ways to make them a little bit like more flattering than I did. But just on my 5-day first impression, I much prefer the Sultry to this. I much prefer the Modern Renaissance. I've only used the Soft Glam a couple of times, and I so far prefer that to this one. This one just, there's a little something. It just feels like you could have made a few little tweaks to it and it would have smashed it out of the park. But because they haven't done that, it's just a little bit disappointing, just slightly. And because I think a lot of people rave about it, which I understand, because purple eyeshadows were really popular when this was released and probably still are, like cool toned eyeshadows are sort of coming back. I just don't know why they didn't give the purples in here more to work with, because they sort of do really clash with a lot of the warm shades in here. I would have loved to have seen, you know, taupey colors, even like the Soft Glam has some beautiful grays. I don't know why they didn't put that in this palette to really make the purples shine. As it is, the colors in here make the purples look strange. So yeah, for me, it's not my favorite. I understand why people do like it, and there are some beautiful shades in here, but the shades that I like the most are sort of like the shimmery bronzy shades, or the nudie shades, or the rose gold shades that aren't the unique part of these palettes. They're sort of like the filler shades in these palettes. And if I like the filler shades the most, I don't really understand. Why would I reach for this over Soft Glam is my sort of question. Anyway, guys, I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to go off and do my nails because this is atrocious. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.